All right, welcome. Good afternoon. Today's webinar topic is what's holding you back? We have a lot of birth related businesses that are struggling right now, but is it the changing cultural climate that's holding us back, or is there something else? Two things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about fear of failure and imposter syndrome. And I find these really fascinating, not only because of what they are and how they affect us and how they affect our businesses and our business ventures, but also because of how incredibly common they are and how many people struggle with some aspect of one of these two syndromes. So that's what we're going to get into today. But before we start talking about what that looks like and how it kind of shows up in our business ventures and how to combat it, I want to back up a little bit. And we are going to talk about this last year and how things have changed and how that has affected us first. So, this is me. If you haven't met me, my name is Laura Spees. I have a bachelor's in education and I taught little kids and then middle sized kids and then teenagers and then adults and kind of stuck with adults. I really enjoy educating adults. And so I am a labor doula and a childbirth educator. And in addition to that, I now also train new labor doulas and I train new childbirth ed teachers. I'm also a certified holistic nutritionist, and I have many years of herbal studies as well. So I am an herbalist focusing especially in women's health. So, in all, I have been working with students of various ages, clients in various stages of life, teachers, both teaching me and me teaching them, and working side by side. I have worked with nurses, midwives, professional trainers. I have worked with massage therapists and chiropractors and professionals in all different areas for more than 20 years. And still, sometimes I feel like an imposter. I feel like maybe I'm going to be found out for not knowing enough, for not being a professional enough, or various things. And so that's why this topic is so fascinating to me because I've seen these things pop up in my own thinking from time to time. And I know I'm not the only one. So I'm guessing if you're here, you may have experienced these or wondered about them at least. So let's start by going all the way back in time and talking about this changing cultural climate, the changing way that we engage with society, and how businesses have responded to that. So, all the way back at the beginning of COVID, I know it seems like 85 years, but it was only 10 months. So, if we go back about 10 months or so, back to March ish, beginning of COVID, and then into April when we went into full lockdown, I was watching the businesses around me. Since I help mentor people in their businesses, I can't help but observe what business owners do. And I was watching local businesses and I noticed two types of responses. And it's a spectrum. People were all over the spectrum, but in general, two types of responses when we went into full lockdown. Some businesses adapted and thrived. Some businesses panicked and froze. And you can probably think back to the businesses in your area and which category they fit into. Now, these businesses were all in the same circumstances, right? I mean, variation depending on what type of business they were, but the culture around them was the same. So the main difference wasn't the changing circumstances, it was the internal beliefs of the business owners. Did they believe that they could adapt their business model? Or were they willing to try something new that they hadn't tried before? Were they willing to think outside of the box? Or were they afraid? And did that fear hold them back? So I wanted to tell you a tale of three gyms. And this could be any business. I've seen this in a bunch of different businesses, but specifically in three different gyms that are in my wider surrounding area here. And I watched the business owners kind of go through this lockdown and these challenges. And one of the gyms took all of their classes online. So they had their same classes, same services, same packages that they've been offering. and they were able to adapt them to fit an online format. It wasn't the same, but they were able to kind of tweak it and adapt it. They kept their members informed. They were in constant communication. Sometimes the teachers were teaching in an empty room. For a long time, they were. All the students were on Zoom by themselves. It was weird, but it worked. And if they had competitions or performances or anything where they needed to be kind of working together in that way, they were able to film competitions individually or film performances in very small socially distanced groups and then compile it. And they found a way to make it work. It wasn't the same, maybe not as good as what everyone would have hoped, but they thrived. In fact, when they reopened in the fall, the classes were so full, they were turning people away. And then there was another gym. They also stayed in contact with their members, but they canceled all of their current classes. They put up a few online challenges and some online, ways of interacting via social media, an attempt at kind of creating an alternative, but they couldn't quite think outside the box enough to offer a virtual option of what they already had of their existing classes. So the way their services were packaged, that was the only way that they could envision them. They ended up losing a lot of members who were paying those monthly fees. Some still stuck around. They said, keep taking our fee. We still have an income. We want to support you. But they weren't getting anything in return. And so they lost a lot of those members. Now, thankfully, when lockdown ended, they were able to reopen and revive, possibly because of that constant contact they had going on. But from an outsider's perspective, at least, it appeared to be a very close call. And then the third gym completely froze. The owners, the employees, everything just stopped. The only communication was social media posts about how scary this situation is for small businesses, about the threats that were against them, about not knowing what they were going to do, not knowing if they were going to survive. No attempt at any virtual option, whether it was making a virtual option of what they already had, repackaging, or an alternative, nothing. Fear prevented creativity. It prevented taking any new risks or new ventures. And in the end, members who loved this gym and loved the owners and the faculty, they were sending out these heartfelt GoFundMe campaigns, trying to start campaigns to keep the gym alive, but ultimately they ended up going out of business. So these are gyms. These are not birth businesses. None of us, as far as I know, are gym owners. We all are birth business owners, most of us. But I've seen this exact spectrum of responses happen in the birth businesses as well. So these gyms are very obvious ways to kind of see what was happening. But I use that as an example, as an analogy for what we also see in the birth world. Over the last year, we've seen it a lot. We've seen labor doulas who say, well, I'm not allowed in hospitals now. That's what I do. My main passion is supporting families who are in the hospital, giving that hands-on support that we know is so important, that continuous support that we know is so important. And I can't do that. Virtual support doesn't allow me to do that. So I can't do my job. Or educators who say, all I've ever done is in-person classes. And I love that personal connection, that interaction, that hands-on teaching of skills, the interaction between the students and that kind of camaraderie and sharing. And I'm not super confident with my online skills. I don't know anything about Zoom, or I have trouble even like checking my email. I can't do my job. And it stops and we freeze. Or I know virtual support's an option, but it's not as good as in-person support. I can't do my job at the level that I think is necessary. And so it's not worth doing. So, because of that happening in the birth world, we are going to spend February, our next 3 February webinars every Monday. We're going to talk about how to do virtual support with excellence, how to bring as much of the in-person benefits into this online setting or virtual setting as much as we can. We're going to share tons of tips and tricks, tried and true methods, and give you guys some ideas, some creativity, some suggestions, some tools that you can use in order to make your virtual support the best that it can possibly be. Especially because even though we may open up in late spring, maybe in the summer, hopefully by next fall, this virtual kind of support is here to stay in some form or fashion. So it's beneficial for us to take advantage of this time now to learn as much as we can to have really effective online support, virtual support, phone support, so that we can integrate it in the future. Because I think now that we've all expanded into these areas, it is here to stay in some way. So if you've been crossing your fingers and hoping that it will end and you can get back to things as usual, I would really encourage you to attend these webinars and learn some tips and tricks of how to incorporate it into the work that you do. However, it's not going to do you any good. I skipped this slide, but we talked about all this. It's not going to do you any good. All the tips and tricks in the world aren't going to do any good if we're still frozen in that fear stage, if we're still stuck and not willing to step out. So that's why we're doing this webinar first. We want to really support you guys in your virtual offerings to your clients, to your students, and the virtual services that you provide, or integrated virtual, part in person, at whatever level you want to do that. But all the tips and tricks in the world are not going to help if we're still stuck in that fear stage. So the two syndromes that we're going to talk about that I suspect, I don't know the business owners, many of them personally around me, but I suspect that one or both of these contributed to a lot of business owners freezing when everything shut down and ultimately their business's demise. Now, of course, there are many business owners who did everything they possibly could, and it was factors beyond their control. That's not what I'm talking about. But the situation in which we don't even try to adapt often comes from that root of fear. So let's talk about those first and make sure that those aren't holding us back. Make sure that we can overcome that so that we're willing to branch out and try some of these new ideas that we're going to spend the rest of the month talking about. So first, we'll talk about fear of failure. I feel like most of us probably have struggled with both of these, but this fear of failure crops up for a lot of people. So some things that it might look like, tell me if any of these sound familiar. Do you ever worry about what other people think about you as a professional? Do you ever worry that people will lose interest in what you're offering, in your services, in your knowledge, in your classes, in the information you're giving, in the service that you're providing, that people will lose interest in it? Or worry about if you're smart enough, if you're capable enough to do this, to pull this off? Or worrying about disappointing people whose opinions you really value? The second one on the list is, then this one is fascinating to me. Have you ever told people beforehand that you don't expect this project or this venture to succeed in order to lower their expectations? Or have you ever told yourself that? You know, I'm going to do this new thing, but it's probably not going to work, but I'm just going to try it. Right? That's fear of failure. We're setting ourselves up so that if it does fail, we can go, see, I knew it. I wasn't really trying. I didn't really think it was going to succeed. That's a fear of failure. Or after trying something, if it doesn't work out, if we fail at it, not even considering tweaking it and trying it again, or trying it in a different way, or trying to repackage it, or do things a little differently, never doing that again. It's all or nothing. I did that. It didn't work. I'm done. Hey, here's this new shiny project over here that I'm going to do. I'm never going to do that one again because it didn't end well. And I did not like that feeling. I didn't like the way that felt. It's all or nothing. And then I say last one, there's really a lot more to this, but our little summary today, the last one on our list for today is quitting midstream. And this could look like a lot of, in a lot of different ways. You could see this. So it could be quitting a project if it looks like maybe it might go downhill. Right? So we maybe go, ooh, I'm not sure that this is going to work out as smashingly successfully as I thought it was going to. It might be a little subpar. So let's stop now and avoid failure. Teachers, have you ever advertised a class and you didn't get a ton of people signed up right away? And you thought, oh my gosh, what if nobody signs up at all? And that would be embarrassing. So I'm just going to cancel it. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Have you ever had an experience like that? That is an exact quote from the inside of my head. So I think a lot of us have experienced something like that. We also do it in a way of getting distracted or procrastinating. So getting distracted by another task that just prevents you from completing this project. Oh, I couldn't complete it because I had this other thing that I had to do. I couldn't get my website up. I started, but then I had this other task that really needed my attention, so I never did it. Or procrastinating. I got to advertise a class. I need to figure that out. I need to finish my curriculum, or I need to advertise my business on Facebook. But I just never have time. And procrastinating, and running out of time to complete a project is another way, really, of quitting to avoid a potential failure. So if any of these sound familiar, hit a little too close to home, let's talk about what we can do to combat that. I've done a ton of reading on this subject over the years, but I love this summary of 3 points. This is from doist.com. I think that you can see the URL on that picture. Isn't that a great picture? So they summarize it in 3 options for overcoming fear of failure. Oftentimes we hear like, just think more positively. Don't be afraid. But that's really hard, right? When you're kind of stuck in this way of thinking. So I like these 3 points that they summarized it as. Number 1 is face it. Face the fear head on. Intentionally put yourself out there, try new things, knowing that some of them will fail. So we're intentionally saying, I'm going to try a whole bunch of things. Some of them will fail. I'm going to tweak it and try it again. Some of them will succeed, and I'm going to grow into that area. So instead of having maybe one offering, I advertised my class, nobody signed up. That felt bad. I did not like the way that felt. It was discouraging, right? It hurts a little bit. I worked hard on this. Nobody signed up. Instead of quitting because we had all our eggs in that basket, let's try a few different things. Let's put out a week class. And then I'm also planning next month a 2-day class. And then I'm also planning the week after that an online quick like intro to here's your options in childbirth. Or as a doula, I'm instead of putting out one package and posting about it in the Facebook groups and that's it. Let's try a lot of different methods of marketing, or let's offer multiple packages, right? Let's try a lot of different things, knowing that some of them are going to fail. But we have other things too, right? So we're increasing the number of ideas that we're trying and changing the percentages. If we try one thing, we either 100% succeed or we 100% fail. If we try 6 things, we know for sure some of them probably aren't going to work or aren't going to work as well, but then we'll have some that will. So we're increasing our odds there. So we have the acceptance that some of the ideas will fail, but the more things you try, the greater chance you have of finding those ideas that will succeed. And then you can pour your effort, your energy, your money into those methods. Number 2 is externalize it. So we have these negative thoughts that play over and over in our head. Most of us, maybe you don't, but then you're probably not here at this webinar. So most of us from time to time get these negative thoughts in our head. What we want to do is get it out of our heads, put it somewhere else. So write it down is the easiest way and read them back out loud to yourself, right? It takes it out of your head and externalizes it. Because in our head, we say things to ourselves that we would never ever say to someone else, right? We say mean things to ourselves. We would never say that to any other human being. I feel like, especially those of us in the birth profession, we got in this profession because we love people and we want to encourage and support and empower and equip and build people up and see them succeed. And then we're over here telling ourselves we're failures and we can't do it. And why are we even trying? And it's crazy the things that we say in our own heads. So get it out of your head, say it out loud to yourself, and then we see how ridiculous it sounds. Or even better than reading it yourself, write it down and have someone else read it to you. And then you shift the perspective. So now instead of you saying it to yourself, you can respond as you would if someone else were sharing those thoughts with you, right? So if you had a client who said the same thing to you, or your best friend said that same thing to you, or you had a student who came to you with that concern or that complaint or that insult, what would you say? What advice would you give them? How would you encourage them? And then we have to take our own advice. So I often think when I get stuck in this, like, I don't even know what to do. Why should I keep trying? I'm tired. Whatever it is. I often stop and think, I have had students say this exact phrase to me, or I have had clients express this same sentiment, or, imagining if a friend came to me with the same concern, what would I say? What do I tell them? What have I told them in the past? Because we always have much better advice when it comes to helping other people, right? We have better perspective when we have a bit of distance from it. We just need to follow our own advice. And then number 3 on our list for today is ignore it. If fear has you frozen from taking any steps, just start doing something, anything. This is especially if we're in that quitting a project or trying to distract ourselves, or, ignoring the project, procrastinating. Like, I don't even want to open my book, or I don't even want to get on my website, or I don't even want to check my list of certification requirements because it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be too much. I'm not going to be able to do it. Just do one thing, commit to only that one thing. There is a very important phrase, and I didn't put it in the slides, so I want you guys to write it down. Grab a pen, write this down, because this has impacted so many people in a really positive way. The phrase is action precedes motivation. Did you write it down? Action precedes motivation. We often think that it's the other way around, that I have to get motivated before I tackle something. But just starting, taking one step, can get us in the right mindset, can get us maybe some excitement or enthusiasm about it. It can bring us the motivation that we need to continue. So it could be as simple as sitting down at your desk or your kitchen table, wherever you do your work, sitting down in your workspace, or opening your computer, or sending that first email, or maybe brainstorming a list, right? I want to offer virtual services, but I don't even know where to start. Let's just brainstorm 100 things. Most of them we're going to chuck out. Most of them, may not be an idea that would be worth pursuing, but there's going to be some good ones in there. And we could get really excited about those. But first, we have to just make the list, just put pen to paper. Or maybe if you did do your training and you haven't certified yet, maybe it's just pulling up that certification checklist. Don't commit to doing the whole checklist. I'm just going to open it. I'm just going to see what's on there and maybe pick one thing. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just going to see what's on the list. You don't have to do all the things, just one thing. And you may find the motivation and the enthusiasm to take one step more. And that is how you get the ball rolling when you feel frozen by fear. Some good tools to put in your toolbox, right? So that's fear of failure. The next one that I want to talk about is imposter syndrome. Now, these two often overlap. So they will definitely have things in common, but there's also something unique to this imposter syndrome. It's often described as feeling like constantly being concerned that someone's going to discover you don't really know what you're talking about, that you're not really as well educated as you present yourself, or you're not really as knowledgeable as you seem to be, and you're going to be found out, right? In quotes, because you really are a professional. But this constant feeling that at any moment, people will realize you have no idea what you're talking about and you're not qualified to be in the position that you're in. You're going to be found out. It can also come out in this idea of feeling that if you know this information, everybody must know it. Like this must be common knowledge. If I know it, it's basic, right? So sharing it would just be ridiculous. I would be laughed off the stage or out of the room or whatever. Because if I know this information, it's basic and nobody's going to be interested in this. So I really don't have anything new or interesting or intelligent to share. It's not special information. And then the third one on here is feeling like you will never know enough, enough, be smart enough, have enough qualifications, enough certifications, enough letters after your name in order to live up to someone's expectations. Who that someone is often a little fuzzy. But I need one more certification. I need one more qualification. I need one more set of letters after my name, one more, or people aren't going to take me seriously. They're going to say, "Who are you to be talking about this?" It's never quite enough. That is a symptom of imposter syndrome. And something that often comes along with this is attributing any of your successes to an external source. So when you do succeed and you do make strides in your field, in your profession, with your clients or with your students, and you see the success, it's not because of anything that I've done, surely, because I still feel like I'm not enough, right? So any success is someone else, any failure is all mine. Do you see that kind of disparity in that thinking? But after a long period of time of doing this, we really internalize it. And then another little thing I want to throw in there is this sensitivity to criticism, even constructive criticism, or not thinking that any criticism is constructive. It's all just hurtful. Because if they are critiquing my class or my services or my website or my social media or anything I'm putting out there, they're not really talking about my work. They're talking about me. They're attacking me as a person because I'm not good enough to do this job or to give this speech or whatever it is, right? It's all very internalized. There's this quote that I love. It's from an article in verywellmind.com, but there's this quote that I love that says, "The problem with imposter syndrome is that the experience of doing well at something does nothing to change your beliefs. So you can succeed and succeed and succeed, but because we've internalized that not good enough feeling, it does nothing to change that going on into the future." So the only way to stop feeling like an imposter in the role that you're in is to stop that manner of thinking, to change the way that we think. And I have 4 methods here for you. And again, there's lots more. So if you really connect with one of these, take the time to dig into it further, to do some more reading on these topics. But these 4, I feel like summarize the different techniques really, really well. The first one is just to name it, to say what it is. Imposter syndrome is a real thing, and it explains some of the thoughts that we have and some of the feelings that we have. It's not that we are actually not good enough. It's this syndrome that we can overcome. So lots of people struggle with it. And it's incredibly common. So knowing that tells us there's nothing to be ashamed about. And shame is often an undercurrent in these feelings. Feeling like you're not good enough or you're faking it, that feels shameful, right? Like I'm hiding something, I'm pretending to be something I'm not. But recognizing that a lot of people struggle with this, and it's a very common thing, a very common syndrome, and a common manner of thinking, takes that shame away, right? It's not just us, and it's not true. Naming it and talking about it takes away the fear of being found out, right? There's nothing for people to find out. But again, getting that out of our heads and speaking about it makes a really big difference. The second one on the list is separating feelings from fact. I kind of hinted to that in the first one, right? There's nothing to be found out. It's the feeling, it's not the fact. So, reminding ourselves of our qualifications, of our compliments, of the fact that you definitely know more than your students or clients. Even if you just completed your training last weekend, you still have so much to share. So much information and knowledge and care and encouragement and equipping and empowering, so much to share with them. You definitely know more than they do. And just being at the training gives you more experience than they have, especially if it's their first baby. They know nothing, right? And they need your help and they need your support. And reminding ourselves of that. It reminds me of the fear, tension, pain cycle that we talk about for labor and the reverse cycle of that. The reverse cycle, we're reminding the families of all the progress that they've made in labor. And then when they recognize the progress that they've made, they're they're oh my gosh, I forgot the word. Encourage confidence. It builds their confidence, and then they can go into the next contraction with more confidence, and they can manage that one better, and then they see the progress they made there, and that gives them the confidence to go into the next contraction, right? So when we separate our feelings from the fact and we start basing our future ventures, our future projects on the facts, then we can have this kind of upward spiral, right? And then the third one is recognizing that no one has all the answers. No one is an expert in everything, right? Because there will always be new topics, there will always be new information, there will always be areas of your field to explore. And that's a good thing. If there are new things to learn, if there are things that you don't know, that's an opportunity for growth. So thinking of it as a learning opportunity, as an opportunity for growth, not as a failure if there's a question you don't know the answer to, right? But just because there are still pockets of information you don't know or can't recall from memory, don't let that keep you from putting yourself out there with what you know today. So, getting out there right now with the knowledge and the experience that you have, and then continuing to grow as you work with your clients and students. And then the last one on this list is rewarding yourself for your successes, giving yourself the credit for it, not attributing it to an external source. You did that. You taught that class. You helped that client. You made your website all by yourself. Whatever it is, rewarding yourself for that. You're acknowledging the job well done. You're giving yourself the credit. And therefore, you're internalizing the success. And that is going to give you the confidence in your future ventures. Just like our upward spiral, right? Just like our fear, tension, pain, upward spiral, we're internalizing the success instead of the failures so that we can continue to grow and succeed in the future. Isn't that cool? So, again, if any of these things has resonated with you, take the time to dig into it more, to read more, learn more about these things, because that has to come first. If we are stuck in any of these areas, it's going to prevent us from adapting and thriving. And this is a time that we have to adapt and thrive, or we're going to crash and burn. That's just kind of where we're at. Society is changing, has changed, will continue to change over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. It's going to constantly be changing, usually not as dramatic as it did in 2020, But things will constantly change. Look at my analogy or example I always give is Blockbuster Video, right? Look, where's Blockbuster? It's gone because they refused to adapt when everything went online. They stuck in their business model. They did not tweak it, change it. We look at Netflix that started mailing out DVDs and then they offered DVDs and streaming and then they switched to all streaming. They adapted and they thrived. Blockbuster dug in their heels and said, nope, our business model's the best. Can't think outside of the box to adapt it. And they died. We don't want to be Blockbuster. We want to be Netflix in that example only. So once we look into that, we make sure that we are working to overcome any of our stuck areas. Now, for the rest of the month, we're going to talk about some tips and tricks and tools to really help you guys grow into this virtual option, virtual services. So you can go on our website, carolinabirthtrainings.com, and see these 3 options that are coming up. Right now, they're listed at $20 each. They are paid webinars, but this week, we're adapting those prices. So don't sign up today. Give it a couple days. By the end of the week, we're going to have different package options and lower price options because we realized if you guys want to attend every single one of these, the cost adds up really fast. So while it was a competitive price, we want you guys to be able to benefit from as many webinars as you want without price being an issue. So wait a couple days and then go check those out and see which of these will apply to you. Even if you don't plan on working 100% virtually, I really encourage you to attend these and see how you can incorporate some aspects of virtual services into what you're hoping to get back to. We're all hoping to get back to in person, right? But seeing what we can add into our services to enhance what we already offer. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, you can email me directly at laura@naturalabundance.me. Otherwise, I hope to see you at webinars in the future.